In 4 more years, Ellicott City will mark its 250th anniversary, and I'm looking forward to that celebration. Ellicott City is a town that has seen more than its share of natural disasters and tragedies, including multi-alarm fires, a train derailment, and of course, flooding. Today, we are here to talk about our immediate flood mitigation plan to ensure Ellicott City celebrates that 250th year milestone and many, many more milestones to come. Ellicott City is special to all of us. More than 100 businesses are in the Main Street corridor. Restaurants, art galleries, shops, boutiques, offices for lawyers, accountants, photographers, and so many more. Hundreds of people call the historic district home, and the town directly contributes more than $124 million a year in business activity and employs nearly 1,000 people. In 2016, we were told that the flood that struck our town had a 1 in 1,000 chance of occurring. Then, not even 2 years later, it happened again, and it was even worse. The National Weather Service and its best, most experienced forecasters tell us they are seeing changing weather patterns in our entire Mid-Atlantic region. Sadly, they tell us that storms capable of producing these devastating flash floods are becoming more likely and harder, if not impossible, to forecast. Our need to adapt to this likelihood and our need to first and foremost protect life safety has changed the conversation. Since the flood, at community meetings and individual and small group meetings, we have talked about a transformative vision for Main Street. And today, we want to provide more detail about that vision. I'm confident that when Ellicott City celebrates its 500th anniversary, people will point back to this year and say, that community fixed it. They got it right. They will say this community stood up, made the difficult and necessary decisions, and made Ellicott City more resilient than ever before. Since May 27th, several people on the lower end of Main Street have told us they don't feel safe staying here. One said she'd never spend another night sleeping in her apartment. And some even came to us and asked us to buy their property. We could spend our time looking over our shoulders, discussing, debating, and second-guessing how we got to this point. We could speculate and place blame, but the reality is much of what happened in the past occurred long before any of us who are standing here today were involved in this battle to save our town. Looking behind us won't resolve the issue, it won't mitigate flooding, and it definitely won't save lives. Since 2016, and with increased urgency since this past May, we have focused our energy and attention on protecting the future. I plan to implement a short-term, 5-year, multifaceted strategy to expedite flood mitigation. First, we've had and are still having discussions with some property owners about purchasing their buildings. We are proposing the acquisition and removal of 10 buildings on the lower end of Main Street that severely constrict the stream channel, intensifying the flood damage in this part of town. Before even considering this as a possibility, we analyzed all other options, but none came close in terms of their effectiveness. This will also provide the most immediate and impactful benefit in reducing the life safety risk and significant progress we've made on this by this time next year. These buildings are all on the south side of Main Street and include the Kaplan's building down to Maryland Avenue. They will be replaced with a wider, deeper channel for the river flowing downhill. In their place, as part of the master plan process, we will create a community open space that will be utilized during most of the year. I will make sure, and I emphasize this, I will make sure the community has a say in what that open space will look like and how it will be used. Communities in our country and around the world have faced similar challenges. Here you'll see an example of a town called Hebden Bridge in England. that has faced a similar challenge throughout its 500-year history. The community created this open space so the water could more naturally expand, mitigating the damage from the flooding in the area. Just like us, this is one step among many in their continuing efforts to address these significant storms. We know some of the businesses impacted want to remain a part of the Ellicott City community. As we implement this plan, the Howard County Economic Development Authority will continue to work with these businesses to find new locations where they can thrive. Some of you may recall the Urban Land Institute's report on Ellicott City. It talked about the visitor center at the old post office up the hill and suggested that this historic asset could be repurposed as a new attraction to generate more economic activity for our town. We will be exploring these and other options and other opportunities. Earlier today, I signed an executive order creating an advisory group to work closely with us to identify key historical features that can be preserved and reused when the buildings are removed to widen the channel. The members of that group are Sean Gladden, Ed Lilly, Fred Dorsey, and Debbie Slack-Katz. These folks are committed to Ellicott City, its history, and its future, and bring strong commitments to preserving the essence of this great town, and I want to thank them for agreeing to take on this responsibility. I am also proposing two new elements to improve the flow of water through the town. The first of these includes the expansion of the channel that runs under Court Avenue, under Main Street, and into Parking Lot D. This area has already been explored through the master plan concepts, and we will tie it to the expansion and repair of the Ellicott Mills Drive culvert. This project will require the relocation and removal of two additional structures. This will mitigate a significant pinch point that causes the water to rush out onto the upper part of Main Street during heavy rainfalls. The second new element we're proposing will be the addition of at least two culverts 10 feet in diameter under Maryland Avenue that will connect to the Tiber Hudson with the Patapsco River further downstream. The diagram they put up shows right here where those culverts could be located. This strategy is to expand the floodplain. This strategy to expand the floodplain combines the construction of upstream retention facilities as well as other improvements. These are listed also on the poster next to me. Further, we are closely evaluating the largest water retention project in the entire watershed, located in the open space behind Old Columbia Pike. This is a major project with challenging technical elements. Since the May flood, we have conducted initial engineering assessments and geological tests and surveys. We're hopeful this project, should it prove to be feasible, could be completed within a 5-year plan. Thank you. Additionally, we are pursuing the expansion of the stream channel in the west end, and that will include the acquisition and removal of approximately 7 residential structures, bringing the total number of structures we are proposing to acquire that will account for about 5% of the historic district. I wish we weren't here, but this is a change we need. Now, before I ask him to come up and speak, I want to thank Councilman John Weinstein for his tremendous leadership throughout the tragedies that have hit our town. He knows this community, he cares about this community, and he has never stopped working tirelessly to help those affected by the flood. Folks, Ellicott City has been fortunate to have such a good person during this very difficult time in our history. With that, I turn it over to John Weinstein.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you all for being here. Just this past Monday at the U.S. Senate field hearing here in Ellicott City, Senator Ben Cardin praised Alan for his extraordinary leadership in the wake of the 2 floods. He actually called him the captain of Team Maryland. That team is comprised of all the local, state, and government partners who have responded to the floods. I want to echo that statement. As I've said before, and some of you, as I look out, have heard me say this before, our search for solutions has been a true partnership without the rancorous partisanship we see way too often in politics today. Friends, this is simply how government is supposed to work. Now to the plan. Since the night of the flood, Executive Kittleman and I have been working side by side with government and community leaders and agencies to identify and evaluate a myriad of options to mitigate the devastating effects of these floods. We started with projects presented in the work from the 2016 flood and considered new or previously discounted ideas. We've heard the urgent calls for rapid action, and the results is this plan Alan has outlined. First and foremost with this plan, we are moving quickly to protect life safety. That is the #1 priority. We don't want to lose another life because of catastrophic flooding here in town. We don't want Ellicott City's residents or businesses or visitors to be put at risk or fear every rainstorm. I started a business on Main Street over a decade ago, and I've had many cups of coffees at Bean Hollow over the years. I think it can be measured in gallons for sure. In 2011, I stood on the porch of the Howard House just up the hill on Main Street, where my office was at the time, and I watched the 2011 flash flood hit the town. I count myself among the masses who feel drawn to the unique character of Ellicott City. In fact, I moved barely a mile up the hill 16 years ago to be closer to Main Street. I know and love the people who are the lifeblood of this town. These resilient people, more than any building, give this community its true character. After many of the over 20 floods that have impacted historic Ellicott City over its 250 years, the town has changed to meet the challenges wrought by the storms. The changes we're proposing in this plan are not easy to make, but they are the right changes for our times. The master plan process, which is entering its final phase, will include new opportunities for parking lot D behind the visitor center, possibilities for a mixed-use parking garage. There could be a space for new or relocated businesses and additional parking that we have all desired for a long, long time. And of course, there's the historic courthouse up on the hill. As you know, I've talked about this for years, once we knew that the courthouse was going to be leaving and the new one opened by 2021. And the reality is that the current courthouse, doesn't contribute much to Main Street's economy. We love the people who work there, but they don't spend very much time on Main Street. The world of possibilities for what to do with the courthouse after 2021 is virtually endless. The timing is perfect to preserve and repurpose the old courthouse to make it an economic driver for Ellicott City and for Howard County. I believe this plan will result in a more vibrant future for Ellicott City. Closer to home than England, though that's a really great picture and does look a little bit like Main Street, some of you may be familiar with the Carroll Creek Flood Control Project in downtown Frederick. That project took nearly 3 decades and cost $60 million that came from Frederick City, Frederick County, and the state. We endeavor to achieve a similar outcome at a lower cost in a much, much shorter time frame. As we have said many times, it's important to note that even with these improvements, storms like the one in 2016 and this past May could still cause some flooding. However, the height of the flood waters will be dramatically reduced, and more importantly, the models show us that the velocity of the water on the road will be reduced by more than 60%. I think many of us realize that slowing the water's velocity will significantly decrease its destructive force that it has on the buildings, particularly on the north side of Main Street. As you might imagine, we have received many suggestions from near and far, some solicited, some unsolicited, about what's best for Ellicott City. This plan is not derived from any single proposal and does not focus on any one suggestion or idea. Instead, this plan is driven by the science and engineering that's been documented in the extensive studies and modeling the county performed after the 2016 flood, and has been adapted by the experience we've had just this past May. Social media has been used to pull our community together, and unfortunately, it has also been a platform for wild, unsubstantiated, and uninformed rumor and speculation. I think you've heard me say that before, so it's not surprising when I say it again. Also, it's important for me to say this. There is a big difference between secrecy and privacy. When several of the property owners came to us, they were still reeling from the shock of this happening again so soon. As our discussions evolved, it was out of our concern for them that we wanted to protect their privacy and give them the time and space they needed to make the best decisions regarding their families, their lives, and their futures. I hope that those who have been concerned about the county sharing more details about this plan as it was being developed, that they can understand and appreciate our respect for the privacy of the people who own their homes and buildings. These are hard decisions for them to make. Many of these people have their life savings and long family and personal histories tied to the buildings, and it is our shared responsibility to protect that. Let me conclude with this. Understandably, this is an emotional situation for many across our community and around the historic district, more so for the people who live here or make their livelihood here. I started my business, as I said, right here on Main Street, so the people in this town are more than constituents for me. They're my friends. I truly understand, I say that, I truly understand and share the deep connection to this town that they do. For us, it's more than a place, it's part of our very being. When it comes to protecting lives, the county has a weighty responsibility to look at the facts while being sensitive to those emotions and to make difficult decisions to do what is right. I believe in my heart and in my head that this is what the county is doing and what this plan reflects. Thank you very much. Alan.
Thank you, John. Also want to make sure people know that we're also moving to resolve some of the flooding issues in Valley Mead, the community north of Route 40 in Ellicott City. We have had and are still having discussions with some residents who have been most impacted by the recent flooding, and we are talking about purchasing some of their homes as well. In addition, we will also be making improvements to storm drains in their neighborhood. We estimate that this extensive, multifaceted strategic plan will cost between $40 to $50 million. That is half the cost of all the projects that were identified in the H&H study conducted after the 2016 flood. Let me remind you that the damage just to the public infrastructure from the 2016 and 2018 floods totaled nearly $32 million. And there's no telling what future damage could cost if we fail to act quickly. We have been very fortunate to have such tremendous support from our state and federal partners. On the state level, Governor Hogan, Senator Bates, and Delegate Flanagan have been continuously working to help our recovery. I know Delegate Flanagan is here, and thank you very much. I don't know if Senator Bates is here or not. I particularly want to point out that Delegate Flanagan has worked hard in analysis for legislation to provide us with more tools to help Ellicott City. I'm a former senator. Unfortunately, the Senate, even though the House supported his proposals, didn't take them up. But Bob Flanagan has worked very hard to make sure that we have what we can from the state in Ellicott City. But also on the federal level, Senators Cardin and Van Hollen and Congressman Cummings have been strong advocates for federal assistance for Ellicott City. And let me also ask former Senator Bob Murkowski in the 2016 flood. As John said earlier, none of our elected officials have made this a partisan issue. Thank you. They have been working closely together with us to bring back this amazing town. Now, I expect that we will receive financial and technical assistance from our state and federal partners. And with that, I believe we can fully execute this plan in 5 years. I've had meetings with state officials already, and we'll have more in the weeks ahead. And I want to thank, again, the federal partners for participating in the field hearing this past week to review the federal government's role in preventing future flooding events in Ellicott City. Again, this plan covers a 5-year time frame with the most immediate life safety threat on Lower Main Street addressed within 1 year. We have some folks standing up here behind me. I want to acknowledge them. I already acknowledged Delegate Bob Flanagan. I'll get to Lexi in a second. We also have Ed Lilly, Fred Dorsey, Sean Gladden, Simon Cortez from Lapa Lapa, Diane Paulus from the Ellicott City Partnership. I appreciate their being here with us today, and so many other businesses and residents for being here as well. But also with us is Lexi Milani. Lexi is the Vice President of the Ellicott City Partnership, and at this time, I would like her to come up and say a few words. Lexi?
Thank you, Executive Kittleman and Councilman Weinstein, and good morning.
Yep, there you go.
I'm here today as Vice President and a founding member of the Ellicott City Partnership, but as many of you...
A little bit closer to you. Yeah, I can't hear in the back.
Sorry, this is not my usual thing. As many of you know, my husband Matthew and I own the Rumor Mill Fusion Bar and Restaurant in Tiber Alley, right over there, for almost 10 years until the flood of July 30th, 2016. Though we had not flooded in the 9+ years prior, that night, almost 8 feet of water filled our downstairs dining room and kitchen in a matter of minutes. My husband and our staff got 47 guests up 2 flights of stairs, over ladders, and our outside walk-in refrigerator to higher ground and safety on St. Paul Street. To say that that night and the days and decisions that followed were nightmarish is an understatement. And my heart goes out to my neighbors who have now been through this twice in less than 2 years. I started working in Ellicott City as a teenager at what is now Bean Hollow, and I've spent most of my adult life working in this town. I am unbelievably sad about the part of this plan that requires relocating businesses and removing buildings. But as a former business owner who had a 1-year-old son and was responsible for a staff primarily of young people during the first flood, I accept that changes must be made and town must be envisioned anew after this second catastrophic event. For me and for the Ellicott City Partnership, the safety of Ellicott City's residents, employees, and guests is absolutely paramount. We know that this plan was developed only after conducting extensive research and analysis. Studies and modeling have been done and every feasible option considered. On behalf of the ECP, I want to thank County Executive Kittleman and Councilman Weinstein for their heartfelt support of and tireless work for historic Ellicott City. The ECP is committed to working with our government partners and all of Ellicott City's residents, business owners, and property owners now and throughout this process as we build a stronger, smarter, and safer future for our beloved Ellicott City. Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our prepared comments. If folks want to come forward, folks I acknowledged, we'll be open for some questions if you have them. John, why don't you come closer? Anybody have any questions for us? Over here first. Be loud so we can hear.
All right, no problem. So I'm wondering about the price tag. I was also at that field hearing on Monday, and it didn't sound like the federal government knew how to get money to you, or it didn't seem like they came prepared with a lot of ideas about funding sources. So where exactly do you anticipate this $40 to $50 million coming from?
Sure. We have been working with the federal government. I know they're trying, and like I said before, they're working very, very hard to help us. I know that I met with at just past Maryland Association of Counties conference last week. Both Councilman Weinstein and I met with multiple secretaries from the state government talking about what they could possibly do to help us. And then we're certainly looking at that. If you look at Frederick, I think John mentioned it, Frederick was a plan that the city of Frederick, the county of Frederick, and the state of Maryland went together and funded that. We certainly would appreciate any support we can get from the federal government, but I know the state is actively looking for ways in which they can help us, and we believe with county, state, and whatever funding we get from the federal government, we can make it work.
Is it safe to say money isn't going to be an issue in Karen Halper's plan? We're going to find the money somehow?
I would never say money is never an issue, but I'm confident, I think John is as well, that we can make this happen. We wouldn't be up here if we didn't think that's true. Way over there.
Yes, I'd like to know, it's sad that these buildings are going to be taken down, and I worked with them lightly in the past on the post office as well, that renovation. What are you, I have 2 parts to this question. What are you doing? Are you going to save any of the facades of these buildings and relocate them maybe? How are we going to preserve the historical content of Ellicott City? The second question is, has there been a study done to see how this Tiber winding is going to affect the Patapsco, ultimately affect our Chesapeake Bay?
The answer to the second one, we've done studies. I don't have the numbers for all that, but we can get more information to you on the studies. I know that with regard to the first point, that's why we have the Historical Advisory Committee I mentioned earlier to help us to figure out what's the best way we can move forward. Because, heck, I've lived in Howard County all my life. I've been on the street all my life. I want to make sure we can preserve the history of Ellicott City. So that's why these really smart people behind us are being included in the process. I appreciate that. Anybody over here?
Obviously, there's some parts that need to be put together, but do you have a timeline in mind for when you'd like to start to see civil action on the 5-year plan?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, let's point out that we've already started, right? As part of this 5-year plan was passed as part of the current budget. So we're working on some projects throughout the watershed on the west end as well. So work is already starting. Elements of this, as you would expect, this is a public process. So we are going to have the master planning process will include a piece of this, the conversations about this as well. The county council will be taking up legislation about this as a matter of requirement, because we can't move forward on expending this type of money without the council. So once the council approves that, we can start as soon as December, January with the plan. Again, the idea in taking down the buildings on the south side, those 10 structures, is to be able to be complete with that before within the year, and certainly be by the end of next year.
Yeah. Yep.
So you talked about 10 buildings, and you talked about you were approached by some of the owners about acquiring the buildings. What of the rest of the 10 buildings that are expected to go away?
They're from Kaplan's down, and we have talked to every one of those owners, and we've had discussions, we had appraisals done, and we've been in discussions with them, and I think that those discussions are being very productive, and we would be announcing this plan if we didn't think that we would have the agreement to be able to purchase those buildings.
County Executive, you can't help it because it's like right across from the Phoenix, which is in the buildings you use. What do you say to the owner there who is so pro Ellicott City, has been rebuilding and putting all the money into it? How does that factor into tearing that down?
I can tell you, this has been a process that's been going on pretty much right after the flood in May. Councilman Weinstein and I started meeting with some of the property owners pretty quickly. And I'll be honest with you, those are tough conversations. Probably one of the worst things we probably had it done in our 4 years is talking to people about what are they planning on doing in the future and how could we work together to make Ellicott City stronger. And all I can tell you is that everyone we've talked to has understood what we're talking about, has been very supportive of what we're talking about. They understand the need to protect this town. They understand the need to make sure this town is going to be stronger because of this. And you know, that's what's so great about the Ellicott City community. This again is an example of us coming together, and some people understanding that this might not be what I want for my building or my property or my business, but I do understand that this will make it safer. So we've lost 4 lives to these last 2 floods. We cannot lose any more. And I remember having a discussion at the community meeting with some of the folks who have businesses and live down this part of Main Street, and they looked me in the eye and said, Alan, more than anything else, no one else should die. We need to fix this problem. And so I really appreciate, I would hope Dr. John speak too, I appreciate the conversations we've had because everyone has been very open to working with us.
Yeah, I don't know that I would speak for Mr. Hemis, but I've spoken with him many times, and each and every business that occupied these buildings provided something different for the town, and so there's no doubt that it'll be a loss. I mean, it's an emotional loss, a physical loss, an economic loss, but it's the other parts of the plan that give opportunity to building businesses returning. The economic development folks have been working to relocate businesses, not only within the historic district, but close to it and around the county, so folks can maintain their businesses. So we are balancing that combination of what's right for the people in their lives and their businesses and what's best in terms of safety for the people who live, work, and visit.
Anyone else? Yes?
The flood is less than 3 months in the past. This plan to tear down half of Lower Main Street is probably a month and a half old. Would you say? A month and a half old, the plan to tear down half of Lower Main Street.
Okay, what's your question?
My question is just to clarify that this plan has just come up. Have there been any studies about the impact of the consequences of removing half of Lower Main Street? You think that widening the Tiber would be good. You don't know. When you take down those buildings, open the Tiber, you know
it's a good question. I think the question was, you know, what studies have been done and how old is this plan? So I would say, and I was talking with some folks who are familiar with what happened in 2011, that there were some conversations even back then about buildings coming down. Gosh, I'm looking at Frank here. I know I've had those conversations with Frank going back 6 years at least, 7 years. Yeah, probably 8, but yeah, at least 7 years. So, no, it's not a new plan. It wasn't part of the 2016 plan for one obvious reason. It was a 1 in 1,000 chance of it happening, and everybody wanted to come back. We had maybe 1 or 2 people in a couple of places, but not on the lower end, asking about buying buildings. That was not the case this time. The second thing is, well, we have one of the models here, but for the last, well, it's end of May, so starting within a few days of the flood, they started modeling. So we used the science and all the models and studies that were done in 2016 to use computer models for all the various scenarios. We looked at scenarios that involved raising the buildings. We looked at scenarios that took half the buildings, the back half of the buildings, or the parts that are facing the river. We did all sorts of scenarios, tested every one of them, and this is the best scenario that has the biggest impact and does it in the shortest amount of time. It's not that it's perfect, but it is the best scenario. Any other questions?
Can you provide a link to that study?
The study, those scenarios will go up. Well, the study's been out there for a couple of years. It'll go out, I think, by the end of the day tomorrow. It will go out by the end of the day tomorrow. Okay, it is a documented plan. So we have
the federal funding you're talking about, would that still require an act of Congress? And if so, have you spoken to the Maryland delegation about what sort of bill that would be packaged in?
Well, there's a couple of things about federal funding. One is we are receiving federal funding because as part of the response. So the county gets reimbursed for a good portion of the recovery effort. So that's one element. And so there are a number of different programs that they're investigating on how we can access it. But in large part, most of the funding comes through the state. So really why we're talking mostly with the state is they're accessing the federal funds which flow through them to us. So there are a number of programs, and again, we talked with Maryland Department of the Environment, the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Natural Resources Department, Transportation and Budget. I mean, all of them who have different programs that they can draw from, and obviously we're coordinating that with our federal partners to make sure that they're aware of them, and where there might be limited funding available, that they can find ways to then fund existing programs. So that's the easiest, easy is the wrong word, the most expeditious way to do that is to use existing programs and make sure it has the funding as needed.
You're not waiting on a specific action from Congress?
No, oh no, not at all.
Can I just that question? We talked about state funding. Will this use the Maryland Open Space Grant? And anyway, I'm just trying to nail down some details about
Well, we're working with the state. We've sat down with them. They're looking at other options they have for us. So we haven't come back with exactly where they would get the funding. So I'm certainly open to whatever they can find for us to help us. So yes, sir.
Speak about Ellicott Road for me, Alan and John.
Okay.
When will it open again? Is there any sense of that?
Right now, I don't have a time for when it's going to be open. I mean, Jim Irvin is here. That's an awful lot of work to do on that slope. There's no question about that. And we're working with the federal government actually on that. I think it's the Natural Resources. I forgot exactly the name of that term. Was it, Phil?
NRCS.
Yeah, NRCS, Natural Resources and Conservation, to help us with that. We think we can get a lot of funding from the federal government for that project. So there's no time right now for that. I'm sorry. Yep. Yeah, Frank.
Alan, John, can you speak a little more about
we'll repeat it.
West End?
Okay.
Those are the most vulnerable people in this old Ellicott city. They've been hit in 2011. Most businesses here were not hit. Although 5 or 6 were in a small 50-year flood. West End gets destroyed. So as far as time,
Yeah, I'll start.
to protect the lives up there, are you starting there?
We are certainly doing, we actually have already started there before the May flood. We are working on projects there as well. I think what We have up here, we'll show some of that. It's hard, I know, to see from where you are. But we have the stormwater retention ponds that are already been designed and engineered farther up the stream. We have the Quaker Mill one that's off of Rogers Avenue. It's already in design and engineering and going forward with. We have the culvert there at 8600, which is right where before you get to West End services that we're working on, and also expanding the stream channel on the other side of Main Street to go in front of West End and come back not far from you. And of course, we have talked with you and the properties near you and of doing things. So those are all things that we're actively looking at doing now as part of this 5-year plan. So there's also even something farther west of that. But
yeah, I'd say it's a good question, Frank. So I think one of the things that you should note from the plan is it's sort of it's multifaceted, as Alan said. So we're working in areas on the West End and here, and then after those projects move forward, including the repair of Ellicott Mills Drive, then we'll start working in the middle part. So there's a bit of sequencing from a flow of water and engineering side, which we'll start getting into things I don't feel comfortable talking about because of the technical nature, but we do have to time them so that we don't stress a different part of the system by building something out of order, if you will. But those plans which have already been put in the budget, they're continuing to move forward because they make sense and they're going to help.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I spoke to you earlier, or last week, and you said you were hoping after Monday's meeting, the feds would step up to the plate and expedite this funding that you all need pretty quickly.
Right.
Is there any concern that the feds may drag their heels and that could extend your timeline?
We received an email from Congressman Cummings' office, I think the next day, to help expedite. Well, this is getting money for the 2016 flood that they still owe us. But no, I don't see any foot dragging, particularly from our partners. Now, understand they work in a larger system with a lot of competing interests, and I am confident that the folks who represent us in DC are working really hard to get things done. And there were some elements that we didn't talk about on Monday. I know Senator Van Hollen and Senator Carter both working on the flood insurance program to make sure that when they can implement some changes to address some of the concerns. Senator Carter was even looking at tax credits for people who've suffered losses from natural disasters. So we have been having these conversations, and they're continuing to work through that. But I think the message we'd want to send is we're not going to wait to get confirmation that the money is going to come. We are confident that the money that they're going to pay us for the recovery effort, both in 16 and in 18, will be coming, and we'll get those funds. But we're going to continue to move forward, and they've indicated already that they're working on some new ideas to have stuff done.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important, and I stress it again, the federal government's huge, and that does take time, but Senators Cardin, Van Hollen, and Congressman Cummings have been nothing but great for us, and they have worked really, really, really hard for us. And so if there's any kind of delay, it's definitely not because of them. They're doing everything they can possibly do to help us.
Right.
Okay.
One more question.
Okay. Okay, Sal.
Well, I have a question. I'm one of the ones of the building that's proposed to come down, and I lost my home, I lost my property, and I lost my business. So specifically, I have to deal with the triple whammy. But my one question, I have a lot of questions, but the one I'll choose today is in relation to the displaced businesses. I really feel as though there is a core of incredible merchants and businesses that are down here that have devoted their entire careers and livelihoods to creating Ellicott City that will now be asked to be displaced. And I don't think it's enough to have the EPA just help us look for other locations. I would hope that our government would have a commitment in, if there's any private-public proposal to do something even on Lot B, that those merchants get the priority and some help for a very reasonable rent. They're incredible. You're asking each merchant, even not a property owner, are going to incur incredible losses from being displaced. So I would like that to really go into the mix, both in relocation in Ellicott City, where most of them have their hearts and their souls and their money for some of these new projects, and then some kind of compensation, for the hardship that the business owners are going to be at.
I appreciate it. Okay, I just want to make sure everyone, she was talking about displaced businesses. I want to make sure people know what you were saying because we could hear you. And the desire to make sure that we're looking out for them, working with them to see if we can find ways that they can relocate in Ellicott City. And specifically, as Councilman Weinstein talked about, I would add the courthouse too, the courthouse and Lot D, what goes on there. And I think that's a really good point, Sally. I appreciate you bringing that up. And as we talked a little bit beforehand, I think we do need to focus on how we can help those displaced businesses in multiple ways. But certainly, I think trying to find ways to encourage them to be able to stay in Ellicott City is a really good idea, and we should do what we can to make that happen. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you coming out.